Following the murder-suicide of Javon Belcher, is there a connection between football players and gun violence? We asked a former Buffalo Bill Hall of Famer. You'll hear his remarks coming up at 7:30. Sweeping change for marijuana laws and gay marriage in Washington State. And the Grammy nominations are out this morning, and we'll tell you who's riding high. More coming up on News Radio 930 AM and 107.7 FM, WBEN.
WBEN News Time 7:22. Our subject is gun control, especially after this incident, the murder-suicide involving this player for the Kansas City Chiefs last weekend. On the WBEN Live Line to help us sort through this issue, Stephen Aldstadt with SCOPE, SCOPE, Shooters Committee on Political Education. Stephen, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, John. How are you today?
You know, this so-called, we're fine, thank you, and I hope you are too. This so-called correlation between football players and violence and guns. Is it really fair to make that kind of a comparison, do you think?
Well, I really can't tell you a connection between football players and guns. I wouldn't have any information on that. One thing I do know is you have people like Bob Costas going on TV and saying if there was no gun, that two people would still be alive. I mean, we don't know that. You know, he shot his wife 9 times at point-blank range with a handgun. I mean, with that kind of rage, it's evident, you know, we don't know if there wasn't a gun there, if he would have simply bludgeoned her to death.
Let me ask you this. Did the Costas comments upset you Sunday night? I mean, he never mentioned the words gun control. He never said Second Amendment. I mean, he could have been stronger, but then again, he could have been weaker on the subject.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was obviously giving his opinion that guns should be restricted, that he shouldn't have had access to the guns. And we hear that every time there's a tragedy like this. And when something like this does happen, it's big news, because quite honestly, it's relatively rare. You know, in this country over the last 4 years or so, we've seen more people buying guns than ever before. Black Friday, just a couple weeks ago, we set an all-time record of background checks for guns being bought. And more people are getting carry permits, concealed carry permits. The majority of states now issue them on a shall-issue basis. And crime rates and violence are going down in this country, not up. If it was guns that were causing the problem, you would expect it to be the other way around.
Now, people are either for gun control or they are against gun control. There's not much middle ground, is there?
No, there doesn't seem to. And I think mainly the people who are for gun control probably don't have a lot of familiarity, and so there's a certain fear of it there. And obviously people who do own and use guns don't want to be restricted.
Why are so many people buying guns? You know, you just referenced, you know, how Black Friday, you know, it's huge, and they're stocking up on ammunition. What's going on?
Yes, they are. Well, there's a perception out there that the way politics is going, particularly with this current administration, that it is an anti-gun attitude, and a lot of people are thinking, well, you know, if I'm going to get a gun, I better get it now because I may not be able to in the future. So that's driving a lot of it.
You know, we have to register handguns in New York State. And, of course, if you're a felon, your long guns have to be registered, too. But for the average citizen, the answer to that question is no. Would you have any kind of objections, I mean, vehement objections to long gun registration if it would help?
Yeah, well, it's been proven that it doesn't help. It is the law in New York City. You have to register any gun, whether it's long gun or handgun. Canada just, over the last decade, tried to form a registry of all long guns in the country, and it didn't do anything to affect their crime rates, but the cost of the government program was just so overwhelming that eventually the provincial governments were refusing to do it, and after a while they dropped the entire scheme. So it's certainly not cost effective, and it does not lower the rates of crime.
Stephen, do you think that guns are at fault for the Javon Belcher, Cassandra Perkins murder-suicide, or do you think that may have happened whether he had a gun or not?
Well, I mean, you know, nobody can really say if they weren't there what exactly happened, but my impression is, like I said, he shot her point blank 9 times, and it looks to me like it was such a he was in such a rage at that point that if he didn't have a gun, he could have just picked up something and bludgeoned her to death. So I don't know that not having access to a gun would have saved her in that case.
Well, remember that old cliche? There were bumper stickers, signs. You know, when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns.
And that's true. And
that doesn't work anymore, though, does it?
Well, it's clearly evident. The places that have the highest rates of crime in this country are the places where guns are outlawed and only criminals and cops have guns, like Chicago and Washington, D.C. And these places where average law-abiding citizen is prevented from having and carrying a gun, these are the places where crime rates are worse.
Yeah, that Chicago situation could be the subject of another morning. Thank you for joining us this morning, Steve.
Thank you.
Stephen Aldstadt is with SCOPE, Shooters Committee on Political Education.
WBEN News Time 727.
Got gold? Get cash. Buffalo's prime independent